all of the writers that you interviewed, it seemed, were older in age, and I know that Hollywood places such an emphasis on youth, and
a number of the writers in the book talked about ageism. We were surprised. Peter Casey, who's 50, and Wings and Frasier, he co-created those shows. He said, I couldn't get a show on now, not at 50. Really? To hear somebody with those credits saying you couldn't get a show on, that's pretty startling.
So what is the logic behind that? Because you would think that we enjoy speaking to people that just have more experience. Why wouldn't Hollywood think the same thing?
Well, there is a little bit of mythology around this. Yes, they want younger writers, but they will never let someone in their mid-20s run a show. I'd say the age of people running shows now goes anywhere from like 35 up to 55.
But there's also a mythology about, we interviewed Ed Decter, the fellow who wrote There's Something About Mary, and he was talking a lot about demographics and saying that there are 4 boxes, and you've got preteens, teens, young adults, and adults, and you always want to go after as many boxes as you can. He gave an example. He said Shrek.
And he's talking about movies more than TV.
But he said that was a perfect movie because it hit everybody. People have this idea that young people spend the most money. And so that's the market you always want to go after, which certainly doesn't seem to make as much sense to me in Hollywood.
No, I mean, it's all these myths.
Disposable income and all that stuff. But there's this idea that young people watch more, they go out to movies more, they watch TV more. So if you're not going after that market, then, a love story with 2 people in their 50s is not going to sell and have the same freshness as 2 people that are coming of age or in their early 20s.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. I know it's not a comedy, although it does have wonderfully comedic moments, and it's amazing to me that Hitchcock is with Helen Mirren and Anthony Hopkins is doing as well as it is, because there's really no Scarlett Johansson's in it, but it's a relatively small part, and Jessica Biel's in it. It's also a small part.
It's being looked at almost as a documentary.
But it's a great. I thought it was wonderful. It's a great romance between a husband and a wife, and really how she did help form his career, and actually was his boss at one time when they were first together. And I think it's great. And I wish, and there was a period of time in Hollywood where most of the stars, most of the people working had experience and were, I mean, if you think about the great stars of the 40s and 50s and even the 30s, they were not kids. But just to go back to the writing thing, I don't believe staffs are full of people in their early 20s. It takes about 5 years to break in. I have a student who's 26. She's on her first show. She's certainly not running it. The 2 guys who are the showrunners are in their late 40s, early 50s. They've had a few bombs and a few successes. So and the answer to why, I think that sometimes the networks think that young people have their finger on a pulse, but they don't have the experience or the craft. So it's the only business I know of where, like, if you were up for murder and you were going to a lawyer, who would you go to? The guy who'd been practicing criminal law for years and years and years and knew everybody in the industry, or would you go to some guy just out of law school? I don't think you would do. So it's kind of a weird dynamic, and it makes no logical sense, but it's what they do.
But using that analogy would be, but we got this hot new lawyer with incredible new vision and new techniques that has great ways to get people off that these old codgers don't get. So that's the way they're selling it.
He'll put, testimony on YouTube.
Exactly.
So far, it hasn't.
Media to get you off.
I haven't seen. Well, most of the showrunners I know of, drama and comedy, are older. I mean, they're not kids. So, and the people who are making decisions at the networks and at the real decision makers, the people who can greenlight things, are still older people. They'll never let a 25-year-old decide how to run a network. I mean, I just don't think that's ever going to happen. The business side's always going to be, like banker age, so.
So knowing that people may have an expiration date, as cold as that sounds,
Mm-hmm.
how should someone plan around that? Who's still very talented, what else can they envision for themselves if they feel like, you know what, I'm going to be booted out of the Hollywood system?
Well, I can tell you what I know. I wish it were that clean, that you knew when you were going to be booted out. It's usually a slow, it's kind of like they put leeches on you and bleed you out slowly, Most of the people I know, and I know like they either change careers, so that my former writing partner is an associate director, and she's made a very good career for herself. She stopped writing about 10 years ago. I mean, she's still writing, but she's not writing television. And she's on Big Bang, and before that she was on Will and Grace. She does pilots. She's always working. And another thing that I've noticed is that writers after a certain age, they become novelists, or they become playwrights, or they just do other kinds of writing, and then ironically some of them end up selling their novels to the very system that was done with them. I think the rule is there are no rules. I don't think it's like banking or law or medicine. I think for every rule, I mean, Peter's writing a script with an old friend right now, which I think, even though it'll be a tough sell, I think it will get made. And that's kind of ironic because, I mean, they're old farts. You are kind of old fart.
It's the diet, a lot of legumes.
You eat those, right?
I do.